This weekend, we got the big boys getting back in the ring, and anytime it's big boys in the ring, it's big fun. Here we are to break down AJ versus Ngannou right here on the Big Fight Preview.
Big boys indeed, Shawn. Knockout Chaos is March 8th, Friday, March 8th on DAZN pay-per-view. We're talking that main event. Former two-time heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua and the former UFC kingpin Francis the Predator Ngannou. Breaking that fight down today, I'm George Jakovic. I know this is ProBox TV, but this could be NBC because I see nothing but champions on that screen. Shawn Porter, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi. We are talking about the main event, guys. Friday night. So, Shawn, we got the big guys, and they're going 10 rounds, not 12. And it's funny because I saw a preview show, and Ngannou said, listen, I've only had one pro fight as a boxer, so 10 rounds is just fine. So you seem to have some excitement for this fight. Just set it up for me. You got two big guys in the ring. We're expecting big things.
I actually, this is the first time I'm hearing that it's a 10-round fight. It's always more advantageous for an MMA guy getting in the boxing ring. The length of a round is just different. It takes a while for your body to adapt to doing 3-minute rounds and being able to sustain your energy in the list of all those other things that go on through the course of a 12-round fight. You bring it down to 10. I think that it just, to me, it makes the fight more exciting. I think you get more output in a 10-round fight than you would in a typical 12-round fight with heavyweights. On top of that, man, the thing I think I'm most excited about, both these guys just did work not too long ago. And so I feel like we got fresh bodies getting in the ring. They just felt that heat not too long ago. So that's more than anything is what has me excited about this fight. I think that we got two guys that are legit. Obviously, we've seen what they've done recently. And on top of that, they just did it. So they're hot. They're ready to fight. And I think that that's what this boxing world needs.
Paulie.
You know what? I tell you one thing that stands out to me, Ngannou, how will he do if he goes into the late rounds again? I felt like against in the Fury fight, the late rounds were kind of what started to cost him if he in him not getting that decision. You know, in MMA, you got 5-minute rounds, but you can lay around on the floor. Also, because you got kicks, you can kind of take the pace can be slowed down at range because of the fact that, you know, you're using kicks and guys can, you know, keep a distance a little bit more. How will Ngannou manage the distance this time if he gets that far? Because he's first got to get that far. I believe we got a real sharp Anthony Joshua coming into the fight. I think his consistency with Ben Davidson and from what I saw in the Wallen fight really impressed me. But should Ngannou get that far, how is he going to manage the late rounds? Because he's going to need to manage them better than he did this time. He says he's got the experience now, right? He got that one fight out of the way. You got the 10 rounds out of the way. Can he manage the 10-round distance in a little bit better fashion and have the energy to really make a push in the late rounds should he get that far?
And Chris, before you give your answer, one thing I just want to touch on. Fury and Ngannou was like a circus act. No one took that fight seriously. This fight, it's not a circus act. This is a fight.
Yeah, no. The cat's out of the bag with Ngannou. He can box. He can fight. He's not just a fighter. He's not just an MMA guy. He can box. He showed that in the Tyson Fury fight. And Champ, you mentioned how he's going to fare in the later round. I'm curious to see how he's going to fare in the early rounds without the success he had against Tyson Fury. If he can't get respect from Joshua early, we might not see the middle rounds, let alone the late rounds. Anthony Joshua's looking very sharp lately. He understands what he has in front of him. It's not like Tyson Fury, who was telling everyone he was just going to walk all over him. Joshua understands this man is dangerous, and he is. So a prime, sharp Joshua, who's also been busy, to your point, Shawn. You know, these guys have been active, which inactivity has been plaguing our sport recently, especially in the heavyweights. These guys aren't involved in that. They both fought recently. They both look good. I think this is a really interesting fight. And when you talk about crossover sports, myself as a crossover athlete from kickboxing to boxing, yes, the time is part of it. How long the rounds are. In a championship UFC fight, it's 5-minute rounds, 25 minutes of total action. But to your point, Paul, there's a lot of ways that you can lag on the time and hold on. Boxing's not like that. The biggest difference is the pace. Even though the round is shorter, it's a much higher intensity and the output's much higher. I'm curious to see how Ngannou can deal with an Anthony Joshua who stays busy early on, especially with his jab. Joshua may not throw a whole bunch of combinations or a lot of power punches in recent years, but man, that guy lets his jab fly all round long. So I'm curious to see how Ngannou is going to be able to adjust and deal with that pace, which is going to be different than a Tyson Fury, who, by all intents and purposes, looked like he was out of shape last time. So very, very, very curious to see how these guys match up, and I think early on is going to tell us a lot.
Well, Paulie, it's also a battle with the corners because Dewey Cooper did a great job and his team with Ngannou for his last fight, and Ben Davidson did the same with Joshua against Valine. So what I've read is that Cooper's saying they want to keep AJ uncomfortable the whole fight, and Davidson is saying that they don't think Ngannou can handle the pace. So just talk about the corners a little bit and how they might factor into this fight.
Yeah, Dewey Cooper and Eric Nitzik both did a tremendous job with Francis Ngannou last time, and you could see in the body of work Ngannou, just even from a fundamental standpoint, they worked on specific game planning and specific strategic stuff, and it fared well for them. Obviously, I do believe that there was a very ill-prepared Tyson Fury. You could see the way Fury was stepping, the way he was throwing his punches, even his feints were not sharp at all. Just he showed up like a slob, and a prepared Ngannou did a good job, of course, and you got to give credit to Cooper and Nitzik. I don't think, like the champ said, Chris, you mentioned the cat's out of the bag. Now it is out of the bag, and AJ is at a point where he's ascending and he's rising back into the heavyweight picture here. He's not going to really be looking to deal with a guy like Ngannou in a struggling fashion like Fury. I think, as a matter of fact, he's going to be able to look back on this and kind of thank Tyson Fury for struggling with Ngannou, because it kind of creates a platform where he can make a lot of money here and possibly look very, very impressive in knocking off Ngannou, because you gotta you have not just the pace of Joshua, but the way he changes, the way he takes control of the ring with his lead hand when he's on, and Davidson does a really good job of this. That is what's going to back him. When I say Joshua has to back up Ngannou and keep him off balance in that way, I'm not talking about he's going to brawl him into backing up, because obviously you're going into Ngannou's kitchen like that. You're gonna back up a guy using a strategic jab, a strategic lead hand, where you confuse him, you power him back, you strategically move him back, and then you can put combinations behind him. As far as Cooper saying keep Joshua uncomfortable, that's very generic. Obviously I don't expect them to just blurt out how they plan on keeping him uncomfortable, because that would be giving up the game plan. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the game plan for any opponent. You want to keep any opponent uncomfortable, right? I mean, that's a very generic quote in preparation for any fight. Anybody in the world going into a fight could say that that's a plan. It doesn't really give us a lot. Not that I would expect Cooper to blur out the game plan, like I said.
And Chris and Shawn, I want your thoughts on that. Also, Chris, age doesn't seem to be a factor because Ngannou is 37. He's 17-3 in UFC competition, but he's 37 years old. But nowadays, age just isn't a factor. But tell me about the corners and how they come into play.
Well, age is less of a factor for heavyweights, but it's always a factor. But in terms of the corners, I think that it's a great matchup. Paulie, I'm glad you mentioned Eric Nitzik. He's an old friend of mine, a guy that I actually spoke to quite a bit before the Tyson Fury fight in terms of making that transition as a guy who did it myself. And Dewey Cooper has been around for a long time. He's a former kickboxing world champion multiple times. Excellent coach as well. Been circling around the Vegas gyms for a very long time. Listen, they know what they're doing. They have a game plan. They know what they have in front of them, too. They know in both sides. They know what Ngannou is, what he can do in the gym. And they also know who AJ is. We all know who AJ is. AJ's been around for a long time and has been in the spotlight for a very long time. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting clash in terms of putting the boxing minds together. And like you said, Champ, I mean, we keep mentioning the pace and how that's going to be a factor. And Joshua, man, when he's on, he is extremely, extremely dangerous. And add in all the technique and all that, he also has power, too. He's a good puncher. He's physically strong. The real question is whether Ngannou can impose his physical strength. Because Joshua hasn't been in with a guy his size, his strength, all that often. And so when you got weird punches coming at you, the way that Ngannou throws those hooks over your jab because he does a super long reach, it's curious to see if he can actually make him uncomfortable and not just say that as a talking point prior.
Yeah, I think, sometimes things are easier said than done. But I really do think that this fight can be as simple as I'm going to say this right here. I think that this fight is going to be as tough as AJ allows it to be. I think when you look at his jab, you look at his work rate, and then on top of that, understanding that this man just came into the sport of boxing. He's put all of his focus on the sport of boxing for less than a year, give or take. which means there's nothing complex coming from this man, Ngannou. When nothing complex is coming from your opponent and you're getting the same thing, A, B, C, A, B, C, and you can do D, A, G, F, A, B, D, G, when you can outthink your opponent like that, put it together, continue to put it together, wear this older gentleman down, make him feel 37, make him feel like he's in the sport that he shouldn't be in. Look at the record right there, 0-1. You take advantage of everything. I personally think that this fight is going to be as easy as AJ makes it.
Or as hard.
There's
Easy or as hard.
There is one complexity in heavyweight boxing, especially in the case of Francis Ngannou. Power. You know,
the power.
You always have to negotiate that a little bit.
That's true.
Put that into the recipe a little bit as well.
Very true.
But also Ngannou is listen, he comes from an MMA background. He has grappling. He's done kickboxing at a high level. You know, that inside stuff. And we saw that in the Tyson Fury fight. I've never seen someone throw Tyson Fury around the way Ngannou was able to. I think that's got to be a big factor in this fight, or they need to make that a big factor in this fight, to be very physical on the inside. Some of that dirty boxing, grabbing and holding and uppercuts and things like that, being able to physically move Joshua around. When you're a guy who's used to being the boss, getting pushed around like that can really change your mindset. So there are ways and tactics that Ngannou is very good at that couldn't level the playing field just a bit.
Was that Ngannou's physical strength, or was that Tyson showing up like a bowl of Jello?
Maybe both.
Regardless, Tyson's never been in a ring with someone that big and that strong. So I mean, we saw that, and Tyson was getting thrown all over the ring by the man.
Well, these fights are going down March 8th, but on March 13th, Wednesday, March 13th, we got Wednesday night fights. Chris and Paulie on the mic calling some great fights. Take a look.
Wednesday night fights. On the next Wednesday night fights, March 13th, join us for the main event. Radovoje Hot Rod Kalajdzic steps into the ring with the Cuban Sullivan Barrera. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at proboxtv.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday night fights.
You can always count on great fights on Wednesday night fights on ProBox TV. Right now, it's my favorite part of this show. Chris and Paulie in the ring giving us keys to victory. Guys.
We are talking keys to victory for Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou. Big heavyweight clash. I will play Francis Ngannou. My esteemed colleague here, former world champion, former two-time world champion, Paul Manaji, will play Anthony Joshua. Now, Ngannou, the cat's out of the bag a little bit in terms of whether he can box or not, because we actually noticed that he can box. He did very well against Tyson Fury. But there's still an element to surprise that he has against Anthony Joshua. Joshua's never been in the ring with him. He does very awkward things. The more comfortable Joshua gets, the more dangerous he is. So for Francis Ngannou to be victorious, I believe that he should set the tone early. Don't let Joshua get comfortable. He does a lot of things with his hands that can be hard to gauge and figure out because of his off-timing rhythm. So I think he should utilize that to his advantage. One great way to do that is going to be use that lead jab as much as he can, trying, especially to the body of Joshua. Try not to aim for the head as much. Secondly, something he did really well against Tyson Fury was to counter off everything. Everything that Joshua throws, Ngannou can use those long arms, especially that long lead hook, the shot that dropped Tyson Fury, to counter over the top. And then lastly, just to be physical, because he has that MMA background. He is very strong with his upper body. He's just as big as Joshua, if not bigger. So making it physical and making Joshua uncomfortable is going to benefit Francis quite a bit. So initially, I think Ngannou should set the tone early, come out with a hard jab, 1, 2, 3 at a time, try and push Joshua back, get him off balance, digging with that jab, pushing, using that long reach that Ngannou has. Next, whenever Anthony does throw, Ngannou has hands where he uses his hands kind of as blocking, almost like a martial artist does, and then he comes back with that left hook over the top. And if he can add the right hand, which he didn't do against Tyson, he could do even more damage. Lastly, be physical. Almost like George Foreman was back in the day, where he was able to use guys and pull their elbows and then hit on the inside. Dirty boxing, where he's able to pull on the head and hit. Those kind of punches, Joshua's not used to. He's not used to being manhandled by a guy his size. Francis, very, very strong. As big, if not bigger, and also knows how to hand fight and grapple with those, even with those gloves on. So that can make him very, very dangerous against a guy like Anthony Joshua.
For Anthony Joshua, the keys are you first and foremost, a puncher is not the same when you back him up. And you cannot allow Francis Ngannou to get confident coming forward. You got to start backing up. But how do you back up the puncher? You know, you got to go to the power? No, you got to have a smart jab, off rhythm, head movement, and fight off that rhythm. And once he's got that good rhythmic jab, and for me, Joshua has had a very good jab under Davidson. That last fight, Ben Davidson and Joshua, the marriage looked very good. I think it's got to be a consistent off-rhythm jab coming off the head movement. It can be both good for defense and good for offense. Once you back it up Ngannou, you know, you're going to have a guy who is a puncher backing up. A lot of times that doesn't work for the puncher. A lot of punchers stop becoming punchers once they're backed up. You think Mike Tyson, you think Deontay Wilder, you think even Julio Cesar Chavez. Not very good once they were backing up. So this is the kind of the same thing here. Once you back up Ngannou, you can kind of force the pace and put combinations on him. And remember, Ngannou is not a boxer. So once he's in an awkward position, he's uncomfortable, it's going to be even more uncomfortable because he's not really in his realm. So let's check it out how we can pull this off. So Joshua, when he's at his best, is off of this rhythm. He's off of this head movement rhythm, and he can shoot that jab. And he can mix up the jab to the stomach as well a lot of times. You want to keep this rhythm, so you gotta kind of keep Ngannou thinking. You keep Ngannou thinking, and you shoot that jab. You can keep Ngannou thinking, or you double that jab. You back him up and start backing him up off that. Or you keep Ngannou thinking, and you shoot a few of these. Once you actually shoot a few of these, you're actually gonna open up a lot of things. You're gonna open up a right hand to the head, or you're just gonna end up keep backing up Ngannou, especially if that jab is accurate and they start to snap the head back of Ngannou. Now you're going to take away the confidence of the guy. He's going to start to second-guess himself. You're going to start pressuring him a little bit. And Joshua, although he's not as physical as Ngannou, is a big guy himself, and he can start putting those hard combinations on Ngannou, big shots that you can put together in numbers, and where Joshua can really show his power and hurt Ngannou. You got to watch the positioning of Ngannou, like the champ Chris Algieri said earlier. So in order to take that away from him, you got to be off rhythm. You got to be off the feints. You got to be off rhythm. And when it's off rhythm, the timing of Ngannou gets disrupted. Once you back him up, you mess up his timing, you can start to back him up and hurt him more and more and more. Do not let Ngannou start coming forward. If Ngannou consistently starts coming forward, all that power that vaunted power he's famous for, now it becomes dangerous because you're backing up. You can be a little bit chinny if you're Joshua. You don't want to give Ngannou any sense of confidence there. And make your feints work, make your rhythm work. Don't do like Tyson Fury. You look like a slob in there, and Ngannou did not fall for any of those feints for that reason. Joshua, if he's sharp, can back up Ngannou, and he can stop him in 5-6 rounds.
And we're going back to the studio with Paulie, myself, and George.
And Shawn, too. Thank you, Chance, for the keys to victory. And don't forget, before we get predictions, March 13th, Wednesday night, ProBox TV's Wednesday Night Fight Series is back.
Wednesday Night Fights. On the next Wednesday Night Fights, March 13th, join us for the main event. Radivoje Hot Rod Kalajdzic steps into the ring with the Cuban Sullivan Barrera. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at proboxtv.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
All right. It is going down Friday, March 8th. We're talking predictions right now. Shawn, I'll start with you, but I just want to throw out there the pressure. There's pressure on every fighter for every fight, but isn't Ngannou kind of playing with house money? I mean, he's signed with PFL, I think. He's talked about still fighting in the MMA. He's not the boxer here. Joshua is defending boxing, a lot of people say. So isn't the pressure more on AJ? But anyway, throwing that out there, Shawn, predictions for the fight.
I think there's pressure on both guys. If you're AJ, you know, you've had probably the best performance you've had in your very last fight in a couple of years now. You had a good performance against the other English guy whose name I'm forgetting at this very moment. But all that being said, I think that the pressure here is now to duplicate what he just last did, and that's can be very tough to do, especially when you have that pressure on yourself, feeling like that's what you have to do. On the other side of that, of course, you got Ngannou coming into this sport, basically trying to bust the door down. It's like you don't want to get kicked out, you know what I mean? So I think the pressure's on both sides. I think that this fight is a matter of game plan. I, of course, beyond being a boxer, side with the boxer. I just side with the boxer because I think that that's what's needed in this fight. You have one guy with a lot of power who hasn't truly honed in on how to utilize it, how to set it up, and the list goes on. A lot of things you just have to learn how to do. And I think Anthony Joshua is more than prepared to take on anything that Ngannou is going to bring.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, George, you mentioned pressure. I think Joshua would be smart not to think of himself as putting boxing on his back for this win and just go out there and do what he does, because this is his sport, this is his ring. And I like you, champ, Shawn, I'm going to go with the boxer in this one. As much as I love Eric Nicksick, Francis himself, and Dewey Cooper and what they've been able to do as a crossover athlete myself, I think this is just a really tall ask. I mean, again, the cat's out of the bag here. I keep saying that. It's really true. And Ngannou can fight, but he can't box like Anthony Joshua can. And I think Anthony has been looking so sharp lately. A year ago, I might have had a different idea about how this fight would turn out, but I think that Joshua, with his great boxing skill, that busy left hand, his ability to feint and make opportunities off that, and the fact that he's really taken this fight seriously because he knows how dangerous this man is, I'm going to lean with Anthony Joshua, and I think he's going to dominate. I think he is going to be in control from the early onset, and I don't see we're going to get into these late rounds, so it's not going to matter if it's 10 or 12.
Yeah, I think Ngannou has a path to victory, but I think Joshua knows how to take it away from him. You know, controlling with that lead hand, you take away the physicality of Ngannou, you take away the power of Ngannou just by keeping him off rhythm and backing him up with that lead hand. It's going to nullify anything Ngannou knows how to do. And of course, once he's nullified, he's not a boxer, like I said in that clip there. He's not a boxer, so he's not really going to have a plan B, C, and D that he's going to specialize in. So it's going to be really tough for him. I see Joshua taking control of the ring, backing him up with a dominant lead hand. I see Ngannou trying, but I think he's going to be anything he does well will be nullified, and you won't be able to see a lot of what Ngannou does well this fight. And I think he backs him up and stops him. You know, Shawn Champ, you mentioned about these guys are busy, and that's what we want to see. They've both been busy. Well, shoot, man. I mean, Ngannou's getting $20 million for this fight. He wanted to get right back in the ring right away. He used to work for a pig over there making $600,000. Fights that you would deserve 20, 30 million a clip. So you're making your 20 million now. Why wouldn't you want to get back in the ring right away? And that's so you're happy for Ngannou because he really, like George said, he's playing with house money. He can actually fight for the passion and love of the sport. He doesn't have this pressure to where anything's expected of him, and he doesn't have this pressure to put money on the table because now he's making that money. So it's literally he's just showing up trying to just make history, and that's a great way to be able to relax your mind going into a fight like this. But I got Joshua backing him up and stopping him. Probably easier than people think. Probably 5-6 rounds.
All right, so those fights are going down Friday, March 8th on DAZN. Can't wait to see what happens. Make sure you subscribe to ProBox TV. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers, and there's special prizes for the 100,000 subscriber. Could be a tour of Shawn Porter's closet. You never know what you're going to get, but make sure you subscribe. ProBox TV is your boxing channel.